So I should say we're live on Twitch. This is the first ever Multiversity Coffee Break. We're calling it. I do have my coffee here in my
Great.
my kids got me this because I was their teacher last year at remote school. So I have my child
Oh.
here, and
Are we live right now?
we're live right now, man.
Oh, cool.
We are going.
I was like, it's one of the few interviews where I'm not like pushing the stuff we're doing. So
Well, that's good. We can chat for a while. So the whole point of this is just to have a casual conversation with creators who we're friendly with. And I know you're a big horror guy, and
Yeah.
I've been thinking about horror a lot lately because I think that horror is one of those things that everyone has a different definition for what horror means. Like when I think of horror movies, I think of the Universal monsters. But I have friends who, when they think horror, they think Night of the Living Dead, or they think Friday the 13th. So I guess I wanted to ask you, what do you, when you think of horror, like what pops up for you?
Well, I mean, they're the classic things like that. The visual kind of stamp of it for me are the Universal monsters as well. I grew up in New York City, and we had Monster Matinee on WPIX Channel 11 like every Sunday, and it was always like The Invisible Man or Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein or all of that, and I loved it. So still have my toys from when I was like 7 and 8 years old, like the action figures of the creature from the Black Lagoon, like glow in the dark, and I had like all of them, Dracula, Frankenstein. So, but in terms of when I think of what horror is or what it is for me, Night of the Living Dead's the movie that really changed my life. Like Frankenstein is the book that really changed my life. Like in terms of, it's my favorite. I actually have I can show you if you want.
Yes.
1919. Here, my wife got it for me for our anniversary. Hang on. I have like the Bernie Wrightson too, but.
Oh man, that Wrightson edition is beautiful.
The only books I have like first edition stuff of ever are like Night Shift, the Stephen King, Shining.
I have The Shining.
Right?
Yeah.
And then so this my wife got me, it's Frankenstein, which is my favorite book of all time. But it's from it's the Heritage Club Sandglass Frankenstein, and it's here, I'll show you. She won't even, I was like, I want to read it. She's like, don't read that one. It's like, whatever. It's from 1934.
Wow.
So, yeah. So anyway, like, Frankenstein was the book that changed me. Night of the Living Dead's the movie. I saw the movie. That was the first horror experience that really like shook me. So I always had anxiety growing up as a kid. And I think like I gravitated towards horror because it allowed me to work through my fears or be scared and then get over it, whereas anxiety is the experience all the time of being in like uncontrollable panic. So it was kind of a measured way of like mitigating that fear. So there was a video store near us where I lived on 26th Street and 3rd Avenue called the Video Stop, and they wouldn't rent R-rated movies to kids, but they would deliver them to your house if you called. So it was like this neighborhood secret and everybody did it. So I saw all these like slasher movies and all the kind of Sleepaway Camp 2 bullshit of, of the 80s and all that stuff, which I thought was cool. But then I got Night of the Living Dead one day by myself, and I was going to show it to my friends. Then it was black and white. So I was like, oh, why would we watch a black and white movie? I was like 11, 12. And so I watched it myself, and I was like very unsettled by it, but didn't really think about it much. And then I just started having nightmares about zombies and all of this, and I hated it then. I was like, I hate this movie. I'm never watching it again. And then later I came back to it, a couple of years later, and came back to Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead. And I realized it's my favorite movie, or my favorite horror movie, because it taught me what horror is and why I love it so much is, what I had been watching were all these kind of bad horror movies that were just like facing these ridiculous slasher stuff, which are fun. I saw all those, like Times Square. I remember going to see like the Dream Warriors, the Nightmare on Elm Street 3 with my dad. But what it was the use of horror to sort of create a story by which the characters are facing down their absolute worst fears, made material either because they're reflected in the monster itself, or it's brought out of them by the monster, or it's all exacerbated by the horror elements and the material horror elements in the story. And it made me realize that horror at its best, in my opinion, is really just like conflict, dramatic conflict burned down to its absolute purest form, where you are up against the most terrifying version of what actually scares you about yourself, about the world, or you're put in a position where that monster forces those things out of you by virtue of the pressure being put, like the pressure cooker model being put on you and other characters. So I love it because it gets straight to the point. It's almost like it's conflict like mainlined right at you on steroids, you know? So I bring that approach to everything that I do, even when I'm doing books that are not horror at all, like Justice League. It's about having Lex Luthor represent the worst fear that the heroes can imagine, which is that that run was very much about him saying humans don't want you for their heroes. You bring this fallacy with you that we're supposed to be good and get along and believe in collectivism. And ultimately, we really aren't designed that way. We're meant to fall apart and be rational and fall into our little silos and hate each other. And that's who we are. So just stop, so that we're the villains of the heroes, not you. And if you gave them the chance to make that decision and vote or choose, they would choose their villains over their heroes, because why not? So that, even though there's no horror in that book, it's a horror. I use horror as like the compass for everything for me, as a way of approaching storytelling.
That's really cool. So I have a bizarre Night of the Living Dead story. Did you ever see, it must have been the late 80s or early 90s. It fell out of print for a little while. And so somebody dubbed over the entire film with a comedy soundtrack.
I did not see that, no.
Like Day of the Dawn of the Son of the Bride. It's this like long title. And so the first time I ever saw the movie was actually seeing this comedic version of it.
Oh, really?
I was like 9 or 10, and it still scared the hell out of me because the visuals in that film are so strong. It almost doesn't matter what they're saying. Like the dread and
yeah. Well, it's merciless. Like, yeah. The thing I love about the film is that it's like, it's so, what I remember vividly is like thinking it was going to be shitty because it was like, oh, it's an old film. Of course the young married couple gets out, and then they don't. They get eaten and like burned alive. And then it's like, well, of course, like the heroine, the woman from the graveyard, Barbara is going to escape. Well, no, she does. She gets eaten by her brother. And then it's like, well, at least Ben will get out. You know what I mean? Because Ben's the moral center of the whole thing. And then you're like, oh no, he doesn't. And all of it is, this kind of referendum on our own sort of failure to get along, even in the face of this marching catastrophe in front of us. So, I love that about it, that it's like you say, it's like infused with this like relentless dread and horror. And it really is about the human condition. That ending is so powerful, where you see the zombies hanging and the people shooting them and the whole, I mean, it's just such a great horror movie for those reasons, all of those reasons to me. It shows you the potential of what good horror can do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you said that's your favorite horror movie. Of the old time horror movies, like let's say pre 1960 or so, what's your favorite of the classic horror movies?
My favorite is Bride of Frankenstein, I'd say. I mean, I loved that. I saw that when I was a kid. And Creature from the Black Lagoon is probably tied. Okay. Those were the two that like lived in my imagination because I saw them when I was 8 or 9. And Bride of Frankenstein is the one that like got me to then go find Bernie Wrightson Frankenstein soon after, which I have like a beautiful, the beautiful edition back I'm in my office, but I have it in the house. And follow him forever, Swamp Thing, everything. Like that was that movie like was my window into Bernie Wrightson, who then I followed on Silver Bullet. Like everything he did I picked up, from Creepshow to whatever. And Creature from the Black Lagoon just totally captured my imagination. I saw this weird making of it at the time too that was on the same Monster Matinee thing, and I just loved it. That and Godzilla. Something about things coming up out of the water, or living down there, and being these kind of sublimated fears that exist and prehistoric. I mean, The Wake is like The Wake was actually designed as like, what if I got to tell Creature from the Black Lagoon? And it was so close to the idea of Creature from the Black Lagoon that I was like, Sean and I played with it, and then we wound up blowing it up into this whole sort of bigger sci-fi tapestry. but it was born of my love of that movie. So all of that, those are my two kind of other classic, I would say, favorites. But yeah, I mean, that's those are the ones. I mean, and then my others, you know, the one I have the seminal touchstones, like, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre really got me, and I was like, why do I hate this movie so much? Same thing, like, why is it so? You realize it's the same thing. It's like it's merciless, but it's also merciless in a way that has this cruel message about, you know, the patriarchal family coming back to get you because it's been forgotten and rotting in the South and all. It's just creepy in that moment and all that stuff. So, I mean, for me, I call James Tynion all the time. Like just last night we were on at like midnight and I was like, is there anything good you've seen recently? Because I saw like a bunch of good movies like Midsommar and you know, Murders and then some that were okay, like One Bedroom and stuff that's just fun. And then I was like, I want something really good. And he was like, watch Host, watch this, watch that, Relic, whatever. So we go back and forth all the time with horror about like, what can we see that, you know, what are we going to watch that's going to really shake us up about using the genre in a way that really challenges you. I mean, I think this moment is interesting because there have been over the last number of years movies that I think have really pushed the boundaries in a cool way, like the A24 films, you know, Babadook and Midsommar and Hereditary and Relic, Beneath the Skin. Yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff, you know, for me has been just that going back to that kind of Polanski like 70s dread, that anxiety feeling, late 60s, early 70s. And I think it's a corollary to the way the world is, you know, when everything is unstable and uncertain, you start to doubt I think you become paranoid and that paranoia seeps in, is an emotional feeling. It's not something that is easily captured by, you know, just monsters anymore. So it's like I watched Body Snatchers, the 78 version with Donald Sutherland with my kid, with my 13-year-old, and he loved it. He was like, oh my God, that's the scariest movie. Because it feels like right now where you're like, you know, feel that kind of dread and that feeling of kind of social collapse is there all around, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Body Snatchers, that one is especially haunting.
Really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What I love about old horror is that there is such a fine line between something that's scary and good and something that's an absolute train wreck. Like, have you ever seen The Creature Walks Among Us, the third Creature?
Oh, yeah. 100%. And I mean, like all the Roger Corman, Plan B, you know, 9 from Outer Space. And
yeah,
I'm like, all of that stuff I love. So.
Yeah, all that stuff is so great. And I feel like there's a wonderful tone to old horror that when you can tap into it, to me, it's like a warm, welcoming, like nostalgic feeling because I was such a kid. As a kid, I was obsessed with horror movies. My dad had a friend who lived like 2 towns over who had a movie theater in his basement and had bought all the old 35 millimeter prints of all these old horror movies. So on weekends, we'd go there and watch like 2 or 3 black and white horror movies. And it was the best. It was just so much fun.
That was I mean, all those, like, yeah, King Kong, like, I mean, all the originals it's funny because it's almost like seeing a play, like, done on film. Mm-hmm. I'm working on this book that I'm not technically supposed to talk about yet, but it's with Francesco. We've teased it a bunch, called Night of the Ghoul. And it imagines a film that was supposed to be one of the greatest films of all time, like a 30s horror film, like the classic Monsters, about a ghoul. Mm-hmm. And that the film was lost in a studio fire. And then somebody finds the pieces now, like the remnants of what was left, and finds the director and goes to ask him what happened. And the book is like intercut between this black and white film footage and the interview. And the way that he's able to capture Francesca, he went back and looked at all these old black and white films, and so did I. And there's this like charm. There's just this kind of like endearing, almost like, you know, diorama feel where you're like going in and everything is so staged. And so you're in like a totally like bubble world. And yet when it's done well, you kind of forget it and you're enveloped. And when it's not done well, it's just funny because it's so high school play, you know, in some ways. But yeah, it's fun. I love revisiting the classics, man. Horror has been my touchstone my whole life. So
we have a live chat going here on Twitch. We have some questions for you. So on the topic of horror, people are asking about the future of witches. Do you have plans to do more witches in the future?
Yeah, we do. I mean, really, what happened was Jock got a job designing costumes on Star Wars, which was awesome because it was incredible. He sent me a picture when he explained it to me of Mark Hamill like holding up one of his designs, and I was like, "You're forgiven. Let's just take as much time as you need." That's amazing. And then because he took time and did that, and I was doing something when he was done, I don't even remember what project, but whatever it was. And so now we're back together. He's just finishing a project with my good buddy Jeff Lemire. That's Jeff Lemire's thing right there. Okay. After Death. And once he's done with that, we're gonna jump right back in. But we're also doing a new Best Jacket book that's horror as well. That's part prose, part graphic, called The Book of Evil. So it'll be fun. It's like I'm doing a ton of stuff with that dude. I love Jock, and but we are going back to the comics simultaneously because the idea of the new book we're doing really requires very little of him. It's mostly a journal that he's like making illustrations here and there for. It's sold in that kind of format, which is the fun thing about doing this label. Best Jacket is kind of like I can kind of do whatever and be like, maybe we go to a book publisher with this one. Maybe we just publish it ourselves. Maybe we go to Image. Maybe we go to wherever.
Okay. But anyway, I wasn't aware of the structure. So Best Jacket is not going to live just one place.
No, that's the whole idea. I was tempted to do it as an imprint at one place like Image because they've been a great home to me for creator owned. But I wanted the mobility, and I already have a couple books like committed that I'm going to bring to Image. So they are like a pillar of my, my creative output for the next couple years. I've got Witches Coming Back, Undiscovered Country, Noctera, and then one other thing too. So there's a lot from Image that. But I wanted the ability to be able to say, what if we do a book that we just do on Panel Syndicate, Brian's site, Brian K. Vaughan and Marcos Martin? What if we want to do something and my co-creator wants to self-publish it? What if we go to one of them is more of a kid type book, like it's more of a young adult. What if we go to a YA, imprint? Mm-hmm. So I wanted that flexibility to be able to do that depending on what my partners wanted to do on the book. So, but yeah, there's a bunch of horror in there. There's definitely a lot of horror. There's some beautiful, there's one that's about like a barnstormer and it's a historical. It's not all horror, but it's a lot of horror.
A lot of horror, that's good to know. Yeah. Someone else asked about what the last horror movie you saw that like stood with you, that has lived with you since you saw it, that really scared you or shook you up.
There are a couple. I mean, I think Beneath the Skin got to me. There were some scenes in that really, it was so weird, and there were things that were really unscary about it in a way that I didn't like. But where she leaves the baby on the beach, there was just a lot of that. We have a baby, and there were things like that I was like, I want to write a scene where somebody leaves a baby somewhere horrible like that, because it was like it just got to me, But movies that got to me all around, Midsommar, I know is like probably an answer you get a lot, but what I love about that movie was that I had no real pretense going in, and the fact that they make something in like broad daylight in this pastoral, beautiful place with like these happy, handsome people everywhere, and they make horror there without ever needing like the trappings of conventional horror, like Cabin in the Woods or zombies or anything. It's just like the last place you'd expect it. I was very impressed with that. And the emotionality of that film too. I saw one that was really difficult and problematic, which I had seen long ago and then forgot, but Martyrs, which I thought was really tough. Like, and I don't know that I mean, it's very problematic in a lot of ways too, but it was fascinating because it was so brutal, and it brings. Did you see this one? It's like a 2000. It's French. It's this like, but it's part of the high tension. What was it called? That kind of renaissance of like really brutal French films, like High Tension and Them and Inside and that. So if you haven't seen those that's like a whole school of stuff. But anyway, that's one for like if you want something that's designed to implicate you and make you feel uncomfortable and really brutalize you, and then be like, but there's a point, that, and then be like, I don't know if I accept that point, and maybe it was all just brutal, and it's just it's an interesting film to me for the ways that it defies conventional storytelling and makes you feel culpable watching it constantly and uncomfortable constantly watching it. So those are the ones that I saw that were out of the box, I guess, like outside the box, fun horror films that all push like in different directions. I'm trying to think of one that I saw that was like real in the middle. I haven't seen one in a while that's just like straight up the middle, well done horror, since like Get Out or whatever in a while. So yeah, that pushes the boundaries in different ways. But I mean, like storytelling wise, it has a structure that you kind of feel what's coming, whereas the other ones were like, whoa, I didn't expect that.
Right.
Yeah.
So someone asked, what horror movie do you really want to see a remake of, and which one should never be remade?
Well, I think Night of the Living Dead should never be remade. I think The Shining should never. I mean, The Shining is not one that maybe that should be remade. I know Stephen King wants it. And I love him. Like we're friendly, and one of the best moments of my whole life ever was when we were with him. I was visiting with my wife with him in Florida, and he was literally talking on the phone to George Romero. It was like when Lands of the Dead that stuff was coming out, and they were arguing about the benefits of fast zombies versus slow zombies. And I was like, because I was like, you're not talking, because he was like, I'm talking to George, like George Romero. And it's like, they have to be fast, George. Everyone likes fast zombies now, whatever. And I was like, I can die. Like, just kill me right now. Like, I'm good. But my feeling, one that should be remade. I feel honestly, seeing how good the remake of Body Snatchers was, Body Snatchers is one that I feel like is ripe for every era of like, like in its own way, because it really is like, it's about the anxiety that that everything is kind of, that the people are not who you thought they were, and that society, there's something creeping in beneath the surface and changing people into unrecognizable sort of hive, people that will only accept what the kinds of, the kinds of kind of beliefs that they hold. And I feel like this moment is probably ripe for that. I'd love to see Creature from the Black Lagoon just redone as Creature from the Black Lagoon, because I think it's one of those movies, the idea that, what I love about it is like the kind of nod to evolution, the idea that what if this monster, this creature down there is something that we never discovered. There's a lot of that in my writing, from American Vampire, which is like all these evolutionary offshoots. But I love the idea of doing it in a way that's scary, because if you could do it in the right way, like King Kong shows that we're the monster, and if you did that in the right way, it could be really scary and interesting and good. I saw Underwater, and it just didn't do it. But the movie Underwater,
right?
Yeah. Now I'm like, what do I want to remake? What do I want to redo?
Well, so someone
Frankenstein is like the perfect one always, because it might just be me, but it's like the deep, I think, like, as you get older, and when you're young, I feel you feel it in one way. When you're old, you feel it in another way. But this dread of death and of, losing the people you love. And when you're young, if you have depending on your childhood, I had a pretty good childhood, pretty conventional. But I was always afraid of losing my parents, losing my family, I was very close to my grandparents, because my parents, my dad was in the military, and then in school when I was a kid, and my mom was in school as well. And so my grandparents took care of me a lot. And so I had this fear of them dying, and getting older. And they're the ones that, I'm from a family of scientists and doctors. So I'm like the black sheep that went into the arts. And my grandparents were the ones that were always like, write and art and all that stuff. My dad was incredible. My parents were both incredibly supportive and took me to comic stores every week. But my grandparents always were like, you have to tell the story and blah, blah, blah. And I think this fear of change and of losing them, and of things getting worse as you get older, was always very palpable for me. And then now being older and having kids, and being at an age where you worry about your parents and you worry about your kids, you worry about everybody, there's this, again, sense of how ephemeral and how difficult it is to let go, and how much worse it might be. And Frankenstein, to me, is this deeply moving book about, like Pet Sematary, which is my favorite Stephen King, which is like, you understand so so emotionally the horror of that book, where you're like, no, I am going to find a way to keep my loved ones alive. I'm going to find a way to defeat death. What if that was After Death is about that, the one I did with Jeff Lemire, is just that belief that like if we could find a way to keep people alive, can you imagine being the last generation that died? You know what I mean? And being like, after that, like you don't have to worry about losing everything. And then the terror of what it's like, the vampire stories of what it's like when things aren't ephemeral. So anyway, sorry, I'm like down my own. I'm
No.
down my own like corn maze of I'm like on the couch talking to you with like my psychologist type.
No, so someone else asked
Yeah.
about your favorite horror comics, and specifically they wanted to know how you felt about horror comics from like the 50s, like the EC comics.
I love these. I have like collections also of like, also like Crypt of Horror and all that stuff. I love all those, you know what I mean? So all the stuff that became like Creep Show and all the EC stuff, and Dracula, Tomb of Dracula. I love those as a kid too. So I love horror comics. I think one of the things that's so interesting about like writing horror comics too, like which is you suddenly realize as you're doing it as a fan of horror movies and a fan of horror books, like novels, that you're working with like a weird combination of tools, because you have enough visuals to like spook people, but it's not experiential or immersive the way a film is. And yet you don't have the room to scare them by allowing their imagination to fill in all the gaps the way a book does. Like the book forces you to make the scariest monster possible if the monster is left somewhat undescribed. So you realize that like with a comic book, the best thing that you can do is create this, for me at least, I think, this like creeping sense of dread, that the spaces that are left unseen between page to page, panel to panel, are the things that you're afraid are like things are going on that you're not seeing, that are coming and coming and coming, and then all of a sudden it explodes. So it was really interesting. Like I love looking back at old horror comics that are very much like in your face, there's not a lot of that. And then thinking now about the form as something that, trying to use it to play on its strengths, as opposed to being like, guess what? Scary monster splash, or like showing nothing in all blackness, trying to figure out how to kind of come at things from odd angles to, maximize the impact of what's scary in a comic.
Sure. All right, I got two more rapid fire questions for you, and then a final question before I let you go enjoy your day. Rapid fire ones. Do you like Lovecraft and weird horror as well?
I do. I liked Lovecraft. I know he's super problematic, and we used to have issues with him. But I went to school in Providence, where there's a lot of his stuff. A lot of his sort of whole biography is tied to. And what I like about him is the core idea that the unknown, the ununderstandable, or what's not knowable is will drive us mad, scary. I like the weird humility in that. The idea that, the monster might not only never be explained, but if it was explained to you, its existence is beyond your understanding, like trying to explain math to a cat. And it's so the dread and the horror is like existential, because it's the fact that you can't comprehend. It's the frustration and the terror at not being able to comprehend this thing that is so scary. So I do like Lovecraft, and I like the kind of Baroque, like
right.
craziness of him. But I also recognize a lot of issues with him. But I like Lovecraft Country. I've watched all of it. My kid's watching it with me, my 13-year-old.
Okay. I haven't started yet. I'm looking forward to starting that. All right. Next rapid fire one. Out of all the sort of 80s-ish, 70s, 80s horror villains, Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers, and Pinhead, which would you most want to write a comic for?
I think Freddy. I think he's the one that like got the weirdest treatment over the years. Freddy was the one that really got me. I saw all those movies in the theater after number one. Like I was too young to see number one, but I saw all the others like in the theater. I just feel like when they tried to make him some kind of weird god of sleep and whatever, and Freddy's Nightmare, and then they rebooted it in a way that was kind of weird. He's the one that I think has the potential to be really redone in a spooky way. The other ones, I love Michael Myers, and I think what they're doing with Halloween and Blumhouse is doing is great. But it's like it's Michael Myers, you know what I mean? And Jason is Jason, and
Right.
so they're pretty set things that they want to see how can you kill people in fascinating ways with Michael. So yeah, I would say that. I would say I would redo Freddy.
Someone wants to know about your experience with horror video games. You ever play any horror video games?
I just was replaying Splatterhouse. We have an old arcade downstairs, an arcade that you can like. It's actually like a PC and an arcade kind of
Console? Yeah.
yeah, console. So you can kind of do that. So Splatterhouse. I mean, Castlevania is one of my like. I played Castlevania like half my life as a child. I loved all of them. So I love horror games. I'm all for them. And now I play. I mean, Last of Us like was my favorite game from a couple years ago. Last of Us 2. My kid and I are replaying Last of Us, my 13-year-old, so that I'm saving Last of Us 2 to play. So
Nice.
I started it, and he was like, Dad, I want to do that. And I was like, my wife was like, he's only 13. I'm like, when I was like, my dad took me to see Terminator in 1981,
Yeah.
1980 or whatever. I was like 12 or whatever. He took me to see Die Hard. I saw Aliens. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, kid can handle whatever. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll turn out bad. But I like horror video games, period.
Last question for you. So when I spoke to you last, it was called Nocturnal. Now it's called Noctera, right? But when you go to like buy a book on Amazon, it says recommended if you like, and it gives you other things. So
Yeah.
what are the recommended if you like horror things, if you like Noctera? So what are the things people can read now while they wait for Noctera to come out that will sort of inform their sensibility?
Sure. I mean, like, it's built on what it is. It's like what's new about it for me, other than like working with Tony, who I've worked with like peripherally on stuff, but I've been circling because he's my friend from 2010 when he like talked me off a ledge when I had to take Batman from him and was terrified of taking Batman at that time. So now is that it's high octane horror, which is something I haven't really tried. I've done like historical, I've done like emotional, but I haven't done like the kind of Train to Busan, like you cannot stop running kind of horror for the first arc. So those are the kinds of things that I would recommend, for us. Like, it's big, high concept horror. So everything from like, Pitch Black to, 28 Days Later to, yeah, like all those kinds of things, Maximum Overdrive, if you want to go all the way back to the 80s, Emilio Estevez, Stephen King, like that whole, I love that. And remember when the soda machine kills that dude? Where I'm sure I have not seen it in a while. I'm sure that's probably one of those that people watch and be like, what the hell was he talking about? Like, why that one? But I loved it with the Green Goblin on the front of the truck, remember? Comic ref.
As a kid, I was so scared of that movie, and I watched it like maybe 5 years ago, and I was like, this is the silliest shit in the world. Why was I so scared by this?
Well, I'm afraid to watch it again for being embarrassed, but that kind of stuff, like really that nonstop, you cannot take a breath because, the whole, everything out there is trying to kill you and you're in a truck and just driving through it like that. That's the feel. So everything from like Aliens to, it's really like that. It's that feel.
Cool.
So I hope people enjoy it. It's gonna be it's a ton of fun to work on.
Well, we should. The last time you and I spoke, your Kickstarter had just started, and it didn't quite hit the goal yet. I talked to you like an hour after it started, and it hadn't quite hit the goal yet. And now you're 4 times over your goal, I believe. We're
we're really lucky. I feel we didn't know. I'll just say this really quick. Like, I understand. Like, the business model we're trying here is something that I feel really good about, only because it's built around both helping the direct market and trying to offer something collectible at a moment when we really can't connect with people easily, with fans, and creator owned demands that connection because you're asking for this like leap of faith where fans are building a whole new world with you or coming into a space that's totally unknown. Whereas, if you're reading Batman, you're just hoping I don't screw it up. Like, you already love Batman,
Right.
You know the whole mythology. So with this, like, the idea really was to kind of invite you in, be part of the process, help us fund the book by buying something you can't normally get, which is the script, the art, showing you how the two work against each other, take a class with me, see how, get a craft lesson from Tony on drawing, all that stuff. So the fun of it is to try and do something that offers connection, collectability, and personal, and then yet at the same time gives us a war chest to be able to fund the book, regardless of the fluctuations in the marketplace.
Right.
And then my pledge to people, which I feel good about, is like I'm not taking money for myself outside of funding the book, you know, and the art team and the page rates and that stuff. Post that, and we're already well past that. I'm now able to give money to the other 2 books that I'm working on outside of that don't have funding yet. So, you know, I like it and I believe in it, and I feel really, really grateful to people for supporting it, because it was definitely I was nervous, being like, the series is coming out from Image, maybe they won't want this, you know. And then I was like, well, but you know, the whole hope is that if it does well enough, then we don't have to ask Image for anything, and we don't have to do anything, even if things get tough. And
Right.
we can help support retailers by offering a retailer tier and all that kind of thing. So yeah. We're trying. That's all. I mean, I like it. I believe in it. And if I'm getting it wrong or I'm screwing it up somehow, I'm always here to listen to it. You can tell me. No, I'll try. Like I'm trying. We're trying our best. That's it. I'm sure we're gonna.
And the response shows that people want that stuff. So it's very cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
What is the page behind you? I've been seeing like the bottom of
that's a McFarlane page from Spider-Man 319.
That one time. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so that I got that on my 13th birthday when I was I went with my dad to New York Comic Con, and Todd McFarlane. I waited like 2 hours for Todd McFarlane, and I got up there and I only had like $100+ that I had saved, and Todd was like, "Oh, well, it's your birthday," and he gave me this page, which was clearly not. If you take a look, it's like a prime red meat page of like Spider-Man. Can you see like Spider-Man, you know, swinging, and it's like him as Peter, and it's like Aunt May and the whole thing.
Wow.
And then on the back, he drew a Spider-Man that said "Happy Birthday, Scott," and it was awesome. So wow. I have it there as a reminder of like my first page I ever bought, but also the kind of behavior and the kind of person, kind of creator, you know, that meant the world to me. Like that he gave me a page worth like 3 times what I had, at least, probably much more, and then signed it and drew on it and all this thing, you know. So it meant a lot. I've talked to him many times since it. He was like, he's always made like some funny joke where he's like, "Oh yeah, I screwed that page. I gave you the screw up page." But I was like, I don't think so.
Well, Scott, thank you for being the first guest on this new project we're doing. You know, we're gonna be doing this for all September and October. We're gonna take a little break. Next week, we have Magdalene Visaggio talking about Star Trek. So if you guys are Mags fans or Trek fans or just fans of creators talking about stuff that maybe they don't get to talk about all the time, this is gonna be happening on Wednesdays for September and October. So Scott, where can folks find you on the internet if they want to find more Scott Snyder?
They can find me on Twitter, on Instagram. My Twitter, everything is like ssnyder1835. I've been using that since I was, you know, my 20s for things. So
what does 185 mean?
Yeah, it's Elvis's birthday. It's like 1/8/35. Okay. So I'm a huge Elvis fan since I was a kid. I was in my teens, and I was like, what can I like that nobody else in New York City will like? And I was like that. And then I actually really fell in love with all the Sun Session stuff, the Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters, and like the whole culture of that era of Sun Studios. So, and then, yeah, so that's where it comes from. But I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. The Kickstarter is called Noctera. Again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate all the support. Got Death Metal, Trinity Crisis coming out next week from today, which I love, with Francis Manipal, who's also doing a Best Jacket book with me. So surprise, but that's the truth. And so, yeah, let's keep doing this. This is a lot of fun. And Mags is awesome. Mags was my student in the workshop, and now she's superstar doing many, many things. And everyone should tune in and watch her because she's great.
Well, thank you again, Scott, and good luck with the school experiment that we're all going through as parents right now. And always a pleasure, my friend, and I'll see you soon, I hope.
You too, brother. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Everybody, see you next week.